Ooh, and that means we're live. 2 minutes early. I had a schedule, not to pat my own back, but did a pretty good job. It's been a little bit of chaos over here in the MMA Minute household. We got the newborn 2 months old, and the wife was at home taking care of the baby all day, a little tired, wanted to go to bed early. So that means the MMA Minute was taking up some of the slack there. But we're doing good. I was shooting for 8. It's 8:08. Can't really complain. We'll see if we get some live viewers in here because this is a down week. We do not have a UFC event this weekend. And I don't know about you guys, but it is absolutely driving me crazy. So the least I could do was, throw together some sort of video. I like going live, so I think this is a good format. And you know what really better way to do it than to look forward, skip this weekend, go into the next one, and we have UFC Vegas 80. It's actually a good card. I don't know if you guys have actually taken some time to look at it, but it is actually a solid card. And we'll see if more people roll in here expecting that 8:10 start time. But yeah, looking ahead to UFC Vegas 80, I think was it PFL Paris is this weekend. So if you guys are around, I heard there's not a stream in the United States for PFL Paris, and people are pissed. And I would be too if that was a promotion I was watching. I mean, no UFC. This is the perfect time to go in and actually steal some of the fans and get all the eyeballs on the PFL. And it sounds like they're not going to have a stream. So that is a little unfortunate. I wish we could recap UFC Vegas 79, but that's one of the very few cards that I actually missed. Wasn't able to watch it. I had a wedding last weekend, so I didn't get to watch UFC Vegas 79. Every so often, I'd take a quick trip to the bathroom, take a look at the phone, and just kind of see what was going on with my predictions, see if I nailed any or if there was any huge upsets going on. And things went decent up and down. I think I ended the night 6-5, but of course, there was a couple of crazy things going on. I didn't get to rewatch any of the fights, but I saw a lot of the highlights. Of course, some of the biggest talking points. You had Jacob Malkoun, right? So Joey, I'm sure you were watching. UFC Vegas 79 was a decent one. Um, Jacob Malkoun was the biggest favorite on the card. People were definitely parlaying him. It was really the only thing you could do with that giant price tag. He probably got up to like minus 600 at close. And I guess he threw a controversial illegal knee. Is that what it was? And then Cody Brundage on the other side of it. Seems like he might have been pulling a little bit of an Aljamain Sterling, if you guys know what I'm talking about. And sounds like that one got stopped. And I think it was a Cody Brundage gets the win via DQ. So Cody Brundage on a massive, 3-4 fight losing streak snaps it against Jacob Malkoun as a massive underdog, but it's not in a good fashion. People don't really respect that when you win by DQ. Maybe he could have continued. I don't know. I didn't really get to see it too much, but that's always unfortunate. That's always unfortunate. And then you kind of fast forward Bryce Mitchell versus Dan Ige. I saw that Bryce Mitchell won by unanimous decision, but I was going back on Twitter on that one, and people seem to think that maybe Dan Ige won the fight. But, kind of look into the stats a little bit. It really went as we thought it would. Bryce Mitchell landed a ton of takedowns, had a ton of control time. Maybe Dan Ige was winning exchanges on the feet, which was expected. But Bryce Mitchell comes out, unanimous decision, pulls out the Bible, starts talking a little bit of religion in the middle of the octagon and causes some controversy. Controversy, obviously. But you know what? Bryce Mitchell gets the job done. That's Dan Ige. That's a top 10 guy. Now he's going to get a huge opponent. I mean, he just fought Ilya Taporia as well, so I don't really know how much higher up you can go than that, but they'll give him a good, favorable matchup, I'm sure. Push Bryce to the top. And then in the main event, Fiziev, dude. Fiziev. I saw that one. Looked like his kick got checked by an elbow. Is that what happened? And then Turns out he might have a torn ACL. He might even miss the entire year. Super unfortunate. Gamrot goes in, lands a couple of shots. Probably not necessary, maybe super necessary. Depends where you fall on that spectrum. But Gamrot celebrates as if it was a huge win, which of course he'll go down in the history books as getting the win against a very good opponent. And that just is another streak for Gamrot where he should have lost the fight. Maybe he was losing in round 1. Maybe he was catching up in round 2, but sounds like Fiziev was doing well there, but he barely beat Jalen Turner. I didn't think he beat Arman Tsarukyan, so people are calling the F word, throwing around the fraud word on Mateusz Gamrot, but can't really comment on that one. Like I said, I wasn't able to watch UFC Vegas 79. That's a bummer. But again, we want to look forward here to UFC Vegas 80 coming up, not this weekend. We have to skip it, unfortunately, the following weekend. And the main event is Bobby Green taking on Grant Dawson. Gamrot has a weird win resume. He surely does. Yeah. And he hasn't really had that many fights in the UFC, but they're always against a high level of competition. And he seems to really hold his own against just about anybody. Never been finished in his entire pro career, and he's got a ton of fights. Has a very good record when you look at it. I think only 2 losses total. So he's got a weird win resume, but I still do hold him to a high regard. I mean, we're talking Mateusz Gamrot. The way he even was able to fight against Arman Tsarukyan, I didn't think he won the fight, but dude, the guy is undeniable. His wrestling is nonstop. The cardio seems to check out. I always thought he had underrated striking. So he's a problem for a ton of guys. He's never probably going to be a champion, but I never thought Sean Strickland would be champion either. And yet here we are. So weird. It's just a weird world being in the MMA atmosphere. There's just so many unpredictable things, which kind of brings me to my next point. Does that mean Bobby Green can't win at UFC Vegas 80? Should we bet him plus 350 when the price tag is that high? Do we bet Bobby Green? I think it's an interesting matchup. I was kind of surprised to see the line just skyrocket to one side. Grant Dawson got over the minus 400 mark. And I don't know, man. I think it's interesting. I do want to do a little bit of a deep dive here. I have up on my screen the UFC stats. So, I mean, Grant Dawson has been in the UFC for quite some time now. Dana White's Contender Series, Season 1, and back in 2017, he actually used to fight at featherweight. He used to fight at 145. And you see here on his resume, I mean, he started out guns blazing. Julian Erosa, Juicy J, in his first UFC fight. Gets the job done. Michael Trezano steamrolls him. Round 2 submission. Derek Minner, his former teammate, steamrolls him. Round 2 submission. These are all fights at 145. And then eventually he decides to bump up to 155. And I believe his first fight at 155 was against Leonardo Santos. And if you guys remember that fight, it was very close. Now, that's a tricky opponent. You look at Leonardo Santos, 6 foot, 75-inch reach. That is massive for the 155 weight class. And Grant kind of struggled in that fight. If you kind of do a little dig deep on these stats here, Grant Dawson, 1 of 13 on his takedowns, did manage to get 8 minutes of control time, and he did manage to outstrike him 46-30. But if you remember, it was a very close fight. One judge even gave a round to Santos going into the 3rd round. I think Grant Dawson was up on 2 of the judges' scorecards, but I mean, it was definitely a close fight. It was not something you just take away and say, wow, Grant Dawson is going to be the next big thing. And then in his next fight after that, Ricky Glenn, another interesting turn of events. You have Grant Dawson probably as a pretty sizable favorite, dominates the first 2 rounds, and then he just absolutely gasses out, gets 10-8'd, I'm pretty sure, across the board against Ricky Glenn in the 3rd round. And that ends up being scored as a draw, which was pretty insane. So it was 28-28, 28-28, and then 29-28. So majority had it as a draw, which is pretty insane. He almost got finished in round 3. The cardio just wasn't there. And all of these fights that I'm talking about right now are actually happening with James Krause at Glory MMA. And I think that was the switching point right there. After the Ricky Glenn fight, I think he kind of looked himself in the mirror and decided, you know what, maybe this isn't really working out. I think I'm being capped a little bit as far as his potential goes. Finds American Top Team. He moves to Florida, goes to American Top Team, ATT, and from there, that's where we really see this current day Grant Dawson. So first fight against Jared Gordon. Yes, he was outstruck 77-54, but he landed 7 takedowns, had 2 sub attempts, did find the round 3 rear naked choke there. And again, 7 of 17 on takedowns with 7 minutes of control time. Jared Gordon, pretty sure he is also a black belt, so that one aged well. Then in the Mark Madsen fight, this kind of sucks because I have just been fading Grant Dawson since he moved to 155. I'll be honest, I've been fading him. I picked Mark Madsen to win that fight. You're talking about the Olympic wrestler Mark Madsen, but didn't really matter. Grant Dawson goes in there, steamrolls him, gets a round 3 submission as well. Had a knockdown in that, doubled Mark Madsen up on strikes, 2 takedowns, 2 sub attempts. He had 9 minutes of control time. That's pretty insane. But then you kind of look at it, and it's Mark Madsen. Yes, he's an Olympic wrestler, former, but he's also nearing age 40. And Mark Madsen, as we've seen in MMA, especially in the UFC, the dude just doesn't have cardio. So really, where do you rank that win for Grant Dawson? It's good, but is it great? Probably not. And then the Demir fight, that's what everyone kind of points to, is that, yes, he went out there. He beat Damir Ismagulov 30 strikes to 13, 3 takedowns to 0, had the sub attempt. And with those 3 takedowns, he did get 12 minutes of control time. We had a 30-26 in there from Mike Bell, which sounds a little bit sketchy when you think about it. But it is definitely a good win. It's obviously his best that he's ever had in the entire UFC. It is a massive name, and it was a legit ranked guy, but it was also a guy in Damir who was 1 foot out the door in terms of retirement. Like we saw, he was talking about retirement. I think he was just taking the fight just to play out the rest of his contract. So anytime you see the R word thrown around, we've always seen that fighter usually struggles like 90% of the time. If they're thinking about retirement, the motivation isn't there. The 100% best version of that guy does not show up. We've seen it time and time again. So again, it's a win over Damir, but how high can you rank that? That was Damir coming on a 1-fight losing skid. Now he's on a 2-fight losing skid. Is he even going to fight in the UFC again? Probably not. So maybe just a little bit of an overhyped performance there when you think about Damir and you think about the retirement aspect, and then you think about the Mark Madsen win and you say, well, the guy was about 40 years old and he doesn't have any cardio himself. So discounted wins, in my opinion, for Grant Dawson. Discounted wins for Grant Dawson. And you look at Bobby Green, man, this dude has been around the block forever, fighting in Strikeforce all the way back in 2011, makes his UFC debut in 2013. He has like 22 fights in the UFC, very up and down. You scroll through the record here, there's wins, there's losses, there's a no contest in there. We got a draw in there. It's a very up and down career for Bobby Green. And it really isn't until just recently where he's been able to catch fire and catch the public's eye and really just turn around what was a mediocre journeyman's career. And now we're talking about Bobby Green main eventing for the first time, which is pretty insane. But you go back and look at the body of work for this guy. Tony Ferguson, obviously that's not prime Tony. That's a much, much lighter version of Tony Ferguson, but he absolutely handles him, outstriking him 137-54, submits him in round 3, which if you're submitting Tony Ferguson, that's pretty insane. That's just a new wrinkle to the game of Bobby Green that we haven't really seen before. Real quick to Joey in the comments. I took Bobby because I think Bobby can hurt him, but I also think Dawson, because I think he could just hold him down or sub him. Yeah, and that's really kind of what we're going to get into. Styles make fights. Styles make fights. That is 100% accurate. It always has been, and it always will be. But before that, Jared Gordon looked like he was on his way to probably winning that fight as well. Before that, Drew Dober shows up as a loss, as a round 2 knockout, but he was handling Drew Dober for the first half of that fight, 73-34 on the feet in terms of significant strikes. He was handling Drew Dober, dancing circles around him. And I also want to point out the Islam Makhachev. That was a fight that Bobby Green took on 10 days notice at a point in time where absolutely nobody wanted to fight Islam Makhachev, a guy who would turn out to be not only the best 155er, who's the current champ right now, but at one point was the pound for pound #1 guy. So takes that fight on 10 days notice against the arguably the best fighter in the entire UFC. What do we expect was going to happen? I don't like to compare Islam to Grant Dawson just yet. I think that's a little bit of a far-fetched thing to do. Bobby Green against Nasrat outstrikes him 188-76. Bobby Green against Ally Quinta, older Ally Quinta, steamrolls him in round 1, knocks him out clean. Rafael Fiziev, you guys know the name. You guys have seen him fight before. He's supposed to be one of the best strikers at 155. Bobby Green outlands him 143-104. Now, they did give that to Fiziev, but still, Bobby Green outlanding him 143-104. That is pretty insane going against a guy who goes toe-to-toe with Justin Gaethje. And those you're talking about probably the two best strikers right there, 155. Bobby Green outlands one of those guys. Before that, against Thiago Moises, another fringe 15. At one point, he was a top 15 guy. He outlands him 85-42. He even lands 2 takedowns of his own. Ends up losing that fight as well, but kept it competitive. Did have a reversal on record here. Thiago Moises only had 1 minute and 51 seconds of control time. So before that, 3 fights in a row. Clay Guida, Lando Venata, Alan Patrick. Bobby Green's getting 4 takedowns of his own. He's getting 3 takedowns of his own. He's getting 2 against Clay Guida, 2 against Trinaldo, 1 against Drakkar Klose. I mean, it's just when you look at the numbers here and you watch some of his fights, you just got to think, no cash giveaways tonight. I wish I could, but I feel like I'd kind of be burning some cash there because I didn't really get to advertise it too much as I would want to. I know the hype isn't going to be there. I really like to save those. So definitely next weekend, UFC Vegas 80, I'll definitely do a cash giveaway then, but glad to see people are taking note of that. And I'll definitely continue to do it. Yeah, I might take Grant by sub, but this is the thing. This is where I go with Bobby Green. Historically, you're getting a guy who has 74% takedown defense. That's over a sample size of 22 UFC fights. A guy who's actually landed 1.21 takedowns on average per 15 minutes himself. We've seen reversals on the ground. We've seen that his get-up game is very strong. On the feet, 6.14 significant strikes landed per minute, as opposed to just 3.67 absorbed. That's great striking defense. He's got great striking accuracy. 5'10", 71-inch reach. You're going to see 5'10" on Grant Dawson's side, 72-inch reach for him. So, physically, they definitely match up frame-wise. Both 5'10", only 1-inch reach for Grant Dawson there. So nothing really too crazy, but the numbers for me, man, is pretty crazy because Grant Dawson is not a striker. We have seen that he has improved his striking, but I still would not say he is a good striker. It just remains to be seen yet. He's only landing 2.99 significant strikes per minute, absorbing only 2.22. Again, defensively sound because what he's doing is taking you down nonstop. 3.7 takedowns on average per 15 minutes. That's pretty insane. And usually when Grant Dawson gets you down, he can hold you down. So that's really the difference between the two. We're seeing a clear striking edge in favor of Bobby Green. We're seeing a clear wrestling edge in terms of control time, in terms of submission offense that goes in favor of Grant Dawson. And that's what makes this a great matchup. But I do think there are some positives still looking at Bobby Green. I got to be honest. It's the takedown defense. And if you're talking about the cardio of the two guys, Grant Dawson is the one that has struggled with cardio in the past. It was really only the change to American Top Team when we saw it more improved, and that is in his last few fights. But historically, we've seen Bobby Green just have solid cardio all the way through. Grant Dawson has had some big question marks. The Ricky Glenn fight, the Leonardo Santos fight, those are big question marks for me, at least. And then, again, Bobby Green, first main event, first time 5 rounds. I think it's the same probably for Grant Dawson, but cardio edge, you could arguably say it is for Bobby Green, just given the fact that we haven't really seen this guy gas out. In fact, he puts more pressure on probably as the fight goes on. I'd be curious to see what he's landing in round 3 of some of these fights. 79 strikes landed in round 3 against Nasrat. 71 strikes landed in round 2. Only 38 landed in round 1. This guy literally gets better as the fight goes on. Rafael Fiziev. Is it the same thing? Yes. 32 strikes landed in round 1, 45 strikes landed in round 2, 66 of 121 landed in round 3. This guy literally gets better as the fight goes on. It is absolutely insane. So the way that I kind of might see this going is, what if Grant Dawson is pushing such a high pace with the wrestling? Yes, maybe he's going to get a couple takedowns. He's going to rack up some of the control time. But who's to say that Bobby Green, being the fresher fighter early on, might not be able to get back to his feet? I think he absolutely can. And when it gets back to the feet, what's going to happen? I really could see Bobby Green outlanding Grant Dawson severely. Severely. We know Bobby Green, he fights with his hands down low. He fires from the hip. If Grant Dawson is coming in for takedowns, Bobby Green's hands are already there ready to fight him off. That's just another wrinkle where I think I love Bobby Green's style, because he is great where he keeps his hands low. I think that's why he's so effective striking, because you don't really see the strikes coming. He relies on head movement, but he's able to do that very effectively. Didn't work against Drew Dober, but ultimately we have seen it work a majority of the time. And I don't think Grant Dawson really has that striking, really has some of that one-shot knockout power. We just haven't seen that from Grant Dawson. So maybe the first 2 rounds, you're going to see Grant Dawson go in there. You're going to see him land the takedowns. But I'm so curious to see where this fight is going to go in rounds 3, 4, and 5. If Bobby Green stays alive, and he has good grappling defense as well. He's been submitted 2 times in his career. Both of those times were all the way back in 2009. 2009 is when Bobby Green got submitted last. All the way down here. Jacob Volkman. No, that's a win for him. My bad. He got subbed. Man, is it not even on here? Bobby Green being submitted. Okay, so Dan Lozon back in 2009, Affliction, Day of Reckoning. That was the last time that he was submitted. That's insane. So is it crazy to think Grant Dawson might submit him? No, because Grant Dawson is obviously improving, but I'm just saying that we haven't really seen him get submitted in a very long time, and he has been taken down. So we know that the grappling defense of Bobby Green is there. So I do think it's going to be interesting. I make a lot of points. I like to play devil's advocate for Bobby Green, because this is a massive price tag that we're seeing on Grant Dawson. Getting above minus 400. The implied win probability right now, or at one point, was Grant Dawson 78%. Basically, they're saying 8 out of the 10 times these guys fight, Grant Dawson wins. On the flip side, 22 win percent for Bobby Green. If they fight 10 times, he wins 2. I don't think that's necessarily true. I know Bobby Green is the much older fighter. That is definitely an aspect that we have to look at, because we know when there's that big age gap, I think it's like 6 or 7 years, it does favor the less older fighter by quite a wide margin. I believe it's over a 60% win percentage. So there are some things there that we definitely want to look at. But I like to play devil's advocate. I like to at least make the case for Bobby Green, because this guy has looked phenomenal in the last 3 years or so. No one was really talking about this guy. Now everybody is. He's finally getting a main event. I absolutely love it. I think at the very least, if you're getting a plus 350 price tag, if they're saying Bobby Green only wins 2 out of 10 times, I think that's incorrect, in my opinion. I think it's worth sprinkling a little bit of money. You could take the plus 350 price tag, but I think a better way to play it is sprinkle some round 4 props to finish for Bobby Green, sprinkle some round 5 props for Bobby Green to finish, and I think you throw a little bit on the decision. You're going to increase those odds from plus 350 significantly higher. I wouldn't be surprised if by decision probably comes in somewhere about plus 600, and then those finish props in round 4 and 5, I mean, you're getting 20 plus 2,500 odds. So I do think there is value on the Bobby Green side. I am picking, make no mistake about it, I'm picking Grant Dawson to win the fight. Officially going down to put in the win column for Grant Dawson. But I just think the odds, if you're asking me plus 350, would you take a flyer on that? Absolutely, I would. Grant Dawson probably wins the fight because he has improved significantly since moving to American Top Team. The cardio has looked much better. The wrestling has obviously always been there. So the submission game has been off the charts, and the striking has looked improved. Do I think he's going to be able to hang with Bobby Green for 5 rounds on the feet? I think that'd be an absolute mistake, but it has looked improved. So I am picking Grant Dawson to win the fight, but if you're giving me plus 350 on Bobby Green, that makes sense to me. I think you put money on Bobby Green at that price tag, given the fact that this dude has shown historically good cardio, could have the cardio edge here. I'm so curious to see what's going to happen if this fight goes past round 3, because Grant Dawson hasn't been there before, and we've seen questionable gas tanks with this guy. Leonardo Santos fight is one example. Ricky Glenn fight is another example. He seems to have figured it out, but it's still possible that that cardio is a little bit suspect. Meanwhile, you have Bobby Green, fresh after 3 rounds, significantly throws more strikes in rounds 2 and round 3. I think this guy's built for 5 rounds. I hate that he's 37 years old and he's facing someone who's only 29. I absolutely hate that. That doesn't favor him at all. But I don't think I don't think we've seen the decline of Bobby Green. Gets starched by Drew Dober. Yes, that's a tough one, but he was looking phenomenal in that fight, dancing circles around Drew Dober. And the Islam Makhachev fight, takes that fight on 10 days notice, cuts a ton of weight, just takes a massive paycheck basically to just show up, and he gets steamrolled by the pound for pound number 1 guy, who at one point was the pound for pound number 1 guy. Until John Jones leaves, he's number 1 for sure. But I think it's an arguable case for Bobby Green at plus 350. Again, I'm picking Grant Dawson to win the fight, but I think Bobby Green plus 350, a little bit of sprinkle on that round 4 finish prop, a little bit of the sprinkle on that round 5 finish prop, and then a little bit on decision. Those 3 bets are probably better than the outright plus 350 in my opinion. But I'm so curious to see how this fight plays out. And I get why people are backing Grant Dawson. You're seeing a clear increase in this guy's productivity. He's finishing guys. Mark Madsen, he steamrolls Demir. That sounds insane to me. I didn't think he was going to win that fight. But I like I said before, I kind of discount that. I just take a little bit of a step back. Demir had 1 foot in the door of retirement, which is super suspect. Mark Madsen, terrible cardio. He was nearing 40 years old. I don't think his ceiling was really that high. So I hate to take away anything from Grant Dawson, but I just think those 2 wins you could probably discount a little bit. And Bobby Green, yes, before his last win, he was on a little bit of a losing streak, but this dude hangs tough with just about everybody. As I said before, Rafael Fiziev, he outlands him 140 to 100. Goes to decision against an absolute killer. And I know styles make fights. This is going to be interesting, but again, Bobby Green historically shows great takedown defense, 74% takedown defense over the course of 22 UFC fights. That's pretty insane. That's pretty insane. So I'm curious what other people think. I did tweet it out earlier. I was like, am I the only one that might be taking Bobby Green plus 350? And it seems like everybody is backing Grant Dawson. You look at the betting splits. They're backing Grant Dawson. The public money is on it. Just the majority of the money's on Grant Dawson. The line moved in on Grant Dawson. So all signs are pointing towards Grant Dawson in that case, but I don't really necessarily feel comfortable putting him in my parlays. If he's minus 400, if he's minus 450, we'll see where this price goes as of fight week. That's where usually the crazy line movements start to take place, when people are actually talking about and hyping up the event, and they see that minus 400 price tag. They're going to be like, oh shit, this dude is a massive favorite for a reason. And they're going to jump right on it. And if I can get Bobby Green plus 400 even, that'd be phenomenal. But I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I am giving the side of Bobby Green, how I think he can win the fight. And if you're giving me plus 350, if you're saying Bobby Green only wins 2 out of 10 times, I disagree. I think it's worth a flyer a little bit. Obviously, you're not going to blow your entire bankroll on this dude, because Grant Dawson should win the fight. He should have the wrestling to go out there and win 3 rounds. I don't think he's going to find a submission. I don't think he's going to knock out Bobby Green. And I'm just so curious to see what's going to happen as this goes into the championship rounds. Now, if this does get extended, we get to see Grant Dawson in rounds 3, 4, and 5, and he looks great, and the cardio checks out, and he's an absolute machine with the takedowns nonstop, and he's getting submission attempts, then I'm all in. I'm putting my chips all in on Grant Dawson at that point, but I'm not ready to go there just yet. I'm slowing the roll just a little bit, and I'm going to be just taking another look at my guy, King Bobby Green, who is just an absolute dog and has hung in there with some very tough guys and has really been facing a very high level of competition for a long time now. So that's where I'm going to leave that. We have the live chat here. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be happy to address them. Otherwise, we're going to cut this live short because we have no UFC event this weekend. Real quick, though, I can just give you a quick look at UFC Vegas 80. If you have not been looking at the card, it's a good card, guys. Joe Pyfer taking on Abdul Razak Al Hassan. That's a banger. Alex Morano, Joaquin Buckley, banger. Drew Dober is fighting on this card, taking on Ricky Glenn. You have Iwan Kutelaba, who is pretty much always in ridiculous fights. Anthony Hernandez, Bill Algeo, still slated as far as I know. I thought I saw a rumor that might have been canceled, but that's going to be a banger. Chris Gutierrez taking on Montel Jackson on the prelims. That's not even the prelim headliner. That's an insane fight. Chris Gutierrez, I believe, is still ranked, and he was just fighting Pedro Munoz in a massive fight, his biggest of his career. Arichi Lang, Johnny Munoz, that's going to be a fun fight. Nate Maness, Mendonca, like, you probably don't really know either of those two guys, but that is a banger of a fight. So UFC Vegas 80 is shaping up to be for an Apex card, for a free fight night. Absolute banger. Love it. Yeah, threw some wild props on Vegas 79. 79, Vegas 79 was not my glory. Freaking Malkoon dropping the ball there. I don't know what happened. That's kind of ridiculous. Fiziev, I had an outright bet on him. He gets injured, fluke injury, tears the ACL. That's looking bad. Mitchell by decision. I did have that one in there. And I did have just a straight play on Charles Jourdain. So, ups and downs. Like every card, man, it's always ups and downs. It's absolutely killing me. I'm just waiting for that breakthrough moment. I've had when I strike like just an absolute just crazy streak of wins, it's pretty insane. It'll go on for a couple weeks and there'll be pretty big significant wins, and then the losses come down and that drags on, and then you go on a skid for like 4 cards and the confidence gets a little questionable, but I'm still waiting for that bounce back moment. I've been on a little bit of a skid. The bounce back is coming soon. You had Gamrot by TKO and Cody round 1. That's pretty insane. Being on the right side of both of those is pretty crazy. So hats off to you. Sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Sometimes it goes completely in your favor, and that's great. No complaints there. It's the ebbs and flows of the game. You have your ups, you have your downs. Usually it balances out, but when you get wins like that, you absolutely take it. So that's going to do it, guys. That's all I got. So I'm just making a case for Bobby Green. I do think he is playable at plus 350 in my opinion. The double leg membership got me those. That's shout out to the double leg. That's my guy, the parlay and Hey Jive picks, right? Yeah, that's the double leg. Those are my dudes. Always love them. Glad to see you're supporting them as well. And those are great plays, honestly. Great plays. I was on the complete opposite of both of them, but obviously they made out like a bandit. So hats off. Credit where it's due. And yeah, so I guess we'll see you guys next week when UFC Vegas 80 is actually here for the fight week. I cannot wait for it. It's going to be a great card. Pretty much have my picks ready to go. I'll maybe change a few of them, but I feel pretty confident. There's definitely some clear hammer spots. So until next time, guys, we will see you then. Thanks for tuning in.